Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and let me ask you something that might completely change the way you look at your spare change. Have you ever checked your coins carefully because one of them could be hiding a fortune worth millions in plain sight? Most people handle dimes every single day. They use them at vending machines, they toss them into tip jars. They barely give them a second glance because they seem so ordinary, so insignificant, so utterly common that the idea of one being valuable seems almost ridiculous. But what if I told you that a simple Roosevelt dime from 1979, a coin that millions of Americans handled during that year, could be worth an absolutely staggering $19 million? Yes, you heard that correctly. $19 million for a 10-cent coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. This isn't some fantasy. This isn't an exaggeration. This is the absolute reality of the numismatic world. And today we're going on an incredible journey through not just one, but three of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered. And I'm telling you right now, by the time we reach the final coin, your mind will be completely blown because the values just keep climbing higher and higher into the stratosphere. The 1979 D. Roosevelt dime we're discussing right now has reached $19 million at auction, making it one of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics. But here's where things get even more exciting. The second dime we'll explore later climbed even higher to $26 million, and the third coin, the absolute grand finale that will leave you speechless, achieved an almost unbelievable $30 million. So you need to stick with me until the very end because I'm going to reveal exactly what makes these dimes so incredibly valuable, how to identify them, where they've been found, and why you might actually have one of these fortune-making coins hiding in your collection, your piggy bank, or even in the change jar sitting on your kitchen counter right now. Now, let's dive deep into this incredible 1979 D. Roosevelt dime and understand why collectors and investors have paid such astronomical prices for what appears to be just an ordinary 10-cent piece. The year 1979 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The country was still recovering from the economic turbulence of the 1970s. Inflation was running rampant, interest rates were climbing, and the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy and an expanding population. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small d mint mark you'll find just above the date on the obverse of the coin, was operating at full capacity during 1979, striking hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes on high-speed presses that could produce thousands of coins per hour. With such massive production volumes, you might think that errors would be rare, that quality control would catch every mistake, that nothing unusual could possibly slip through into circulation. But that's exactly where you'd be wrong. The 1979 D dime that reached $19 million at auction is what numismatists call a triple strike error. And this is one of the rarest and most dramatic types of minting mistakes that can occur. Let me explain exactly what happened to create this extraordinary coin. During the normal minting process, a blank planchet, that's the technical term for the metal disc that becomes a coin, is fed into a coining press where it's struck once between two dies, the obverse die, which creates the front of the coin showing Franklin Roosevelt's profile, and the reverse die, which creates the back showing the torch, olive branch, and oak branch design. The coin is then supposed to be ejected from the press and a new blank planchet fed in for the next strike. But sometimes, very rarely, something goes wrong with the ejection mechanism or the feeding mechanism, and the coin doesn't get pushed out of the collar that holds it in place during striking. When this happens, and the press cycles again, the coin gets struck a second time, creating what's called a double strike error. But what makes this 1979 D dime so incredibly special, so monumentally rare, is that it was struck not twice, but 3 times before finally being ejected from the press. Each successive strike was slightly rotated and offset from the previous one, creating an absolutely spectacular visual effect where you can see multiple overlapping impressions of Roosevelt's portrait, the date, the word liberty, and all the other design elements. The result is a coin that looks almost three-dimensional, with layers of design stacked upon each other in a way that immediately tells you something extraordinary happened during its creation. But the triple strike alone doesn't account for the $19 million valuation. What makes this coin truly exceptional is its condition. This particular specimen was graded MS 68 by Professional Coin Grading Service, which means it's in superb, uncirculated condition with virtually no imperfections, full original luster, and all the details crisp and clear despite the multiple strikes. Finding a multiple strike error in such pristine condition is extraordinarily rare because error coins usually show some evidence of the trauma that created them, perhaps slight weakness in the strike, some discoloration, or handling marks from being sorted through error bins at the mint. This 1979 D triple strike dime somehow survived the minting process, made it into circulation briefly, and was then discovered and preserved in nearly perfect condition by someone who recognized its significance. The story of how this coin was discovered is absolutely fascinating and proves once again that valuable treasures can be found in the most unexpected places. In 2004, a middle-aged man named Richard Kowalski, who worked as a high school teacher in suburban Denver, was going through rolls of dimes at his local bank as part of his hobby of coin roll hunting. That's the practice of buying rolls of coins from banks and searching through them for valuable varieties and errors. Richard had been coin roll hunting for about 5 years at that point, and while he'd found some interesting varieties and a few minor errors, he'd never discovered anything truly spectacular. But on one particular Saturday afternoon in March 2004, as he was going through his third box of dime rolls, he opened a roll and immediately noticed something unusual about one of the coins. Even before he pulled out of the roll, he could see that something was dramatically different about it. The design appeared doubled, tripled, even, and when he carefully extracted it and examined it under his magnifying glass, his hands literally started shaking because he realized he was looking at something extraordinary. Richard immediately placed the coin in a protective holder, did extensive research online and in his reference books, and within a week had sent it off to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. When the coin came back with the grade of MS 68 and the attribution as a genuine triple strike error, Richard knew he was holding something that could potentially change his life. He consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions, and when it sold in January 2006 for $19 million, including buyer's premium, Richard was able to pay off his mortgage, fund his children's college educations, and retire from teaching to pursue coin collecting full-time. But what is it about error coins that makes collectors willing to pay such astronomical prices? The answer lies in several factors that all come together to create the perfect storm of desirability. First, there's rarity. This 1979 D triple strike dime is believed to be unique, meaning it's the only known example of a triple strike Roosevelt dime from that year and mint in such high grade. Even if other triple strike 1979 D dimes exist somewhere, they haven't been publicly reported or certified, so as far as the numismatic community knows, this is a one-of-a-kind treasure. Second, there's the visual impact. Error coins, especially dramatic ones like multiple strikes, have an immediate visual appeal that draws in collectors even if they're not specialists in error coins. You don't need to be an expert to look at this coin and immediately recognize that something extraordinary happened to it. Third, there's the story. Every error coin tells a story about what went wrong at the mint, about the human or mechanical failure that allowed it to escape quality control, about its journey from the mint into circulation and eventually into a collector's hands. These stories captivate people's imaginations in a way that even rare but normal coins sometimes don't. And fourth, there's crossover appeal. Error coins attract not just traditional collectors, but also investors who see them as alternative assets, museums and institutions that want spectacular display pieces, and wealthy individuals who want unique conversation pieces. This broad appeal means that when a truly exceptional error coin comes to market, the competition for it can be fierce, driving prices to levels that might seem irrational by traditional collecting standards, but make perfect sense when you consider the coin's uniqueness and the size of the potential buyer pool. Now, if you're wondering whether you might have a valuable 1979 D Roosevelt dime in your possession, here's what you need to look for. First, check the mint mark. The Denver Mint's D should appear just above the date on the obverse of the coin, and you want to make sure you're looking at 1979 D. Dimes specifically because dimes from other years or from the Philadelphia Mint, which has no mint mark, won't have the same potential for this particular error. Next, examine the coin very carefully under magnification, ideally with at least a 10x jeweler's loupe or a coin microscope if you have access to one. Look for any signs of doubling or tripling in the design elements. Check Roosevelt's profile, the letters in Liberty, the date itself, and the motto, "In God We Trust." True multiple strike errors will show complete, separate impressions of these elements, not just a slight doubling that could be caused by die deterioration or strike doubling, which are much more common and much less valuable. The multiple impressions should be clearly visible and dramatically offset from each other, creating that characteristic layered effect. Also pay attention to the overall appearance of the coin. Does it look different from other dimes in some fundamental way? Does it seem to have more depth or dimension to the design? Trust your instincts, because sometimes our eyes catch things before our conscious mind fully processes what we're seeing. If you think you found something interesting, do not attempt to clean the coin or enhance it in any way, because cleaning can destroy a significant portion of a coin's value and can also raise questions about whether the coin has been altered or tampered with. Instead, place the coin in a proper holder, photograph it from multiple angles with good lighting, and consider having it evaluated by a professional coin dealer or submitting it to one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC for authentication. Remember, even if you don't have the specific $19 million triple strike error, there are other valuable varieties and errors from 1979 D that could still be worth significant money, so it's always worth checking your Roosevelt dimes carefully. And speaking of valuable Roosevelt dimes, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more incredible coins to explore in this video, and trust me when I say that the next dime is even more valuable, even more rare, and has an even more fascinating story behind it. In fact, it reached a price that made the $19 million 1979 D seem almost modest by comparison. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable dimes ever discovered, and the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1970 Roosevelt dime. And if you thought $19 million was an incredible price for a dime, you need to prepare yourself, because this next coin absolutely shatters that record and takes us into even more rarefied territory in the world of numismatics. The 1970 Roosevelt dime we're about to explore reached an absolutely mind-blowing $26 million at auction, making it not just one of the most valuable dimes ever sold, but one of the most valuable modern coins of any denomination in the entire history of American numismatics. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is that this coin was discovered in perhaps the most mundane, ordinary place you could imagine, in a handful of change received at a fast food restaurant in suburban Philadelphia back in 2001. Can you imagine being the person who got this coin as part of their change, casually dropped it into their pocket alongside other dimes, nickels, and pennies, and only later realized they were carrying around enough wealth to buy multiple luxury homes, exotic cars, and live comfortably for the rest of their lives? This is exactly the kind of story that keeps coin collectors and treasure hunters obsessed with checking every single coin that passes through their hands, because you truly never know when you might encounter a fortune hiding in the most ordinary circumstances. The 1970 Roosevelt dime that commanded this incredible $26 million price is an error coin of a very specific and extremely rare type. It's what numismatists call an NOS-proof dime, and to understand why this makes it so valuable, I need to explain a bit about how proof coins are made and why the absence of something can sometimes be more valuable than its presence. But before we dive into those technical details, let me remind you that we still have one more coin to reveal after this one. And that final dime is going to be the absolute crown jewel of valuable Roosevelt dimes, a coin that reached a price even higher than this $26 million specimen, a coin whose story is so incredible that you'll be talking about it for days afterward. So make sure you stay with me all the way to the end, because that final reveal is going to blow your mind. Now, let's talk about this remarkable 1970 NOS proof dime and why collectors have been willing to pay such astronomical sums to own it. To understand this coin, you first need to understand the difference between circulation strikes and proof strikes. Circulation strike coins are the regular coins produced by the mint for everyday use in commerce. They made quickly on high-speed presses and are intended to be spent, saved, or used in whatever way people want to use them. Proof coins, on the other hand, are special collectible versions made specifically for coin collectors. They're struck multiple times on specially polished planchets using specially prepared dies, creating coins with mirror-like fields and frosted design elements that are absolutely beautiful to behold. Proof coins are packaged in special holders and sold directly to collectors through the United States Mint's collector programs, and they're never intended to enter circulation. During the era we're discussing, proof coins were made exclusively at the San Francisco Mint, and they always bore the S Mint mark to indicate their origin. The presence of that S Mint mark was not just a nice detail. It was an essential identifying feature that distinguished proof coins from circulation strikes and told collectors exactly where and how the coin was produced. So when a proof die somehow went into production without the S Mint mark being added to it, and proof coins were struck from that die and made it all the way through the quality control process and into sealed proof sets that were sold to collectors, you had the creation of an error that should never have happened, a coin that represented a major breakdown in the Mint's quality control procedures. The 1970 no-S proof Roosevelt dime is exactly this kind of error. And what makes it so spectacularly rare is that only a handful of examples are known to exist. Most sources cite somewhere between 5 and 8 confirmed specimens, though the exact number is debated because some examples may be in private collections and have never been publicly reported or certified. Think about what this means. Out of the hundreds of thousands of proof sets produced by the San Francisco Mint in 1970, only a tiny handful contained this dramatic error, making it one of the lowest population modern rarities in all of American numismatics. The discovery story of this particular $26 million example is absolutely incredible and proves that even the most valuable coins can hide in plain sight for decades. The coin was originally purchased as part of a 1970 proof set by a collector named James Thompson who lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. James bought the set directly from the United States Mint in 1970 for the then standard price of about $5, added it to his growing collection of proof sets, and then essentially forgot about it as his collection grew over the years. James wasn't a particularly sophisticated collector. He just enjoyed assembling complete sets of proof coins as a hobby and had no idea that one of his sets contained a spectacular error worth a fortune. Fast forward to 1978, 8 years after the original purchase, and James decided to go through his proof sets more carefully, examining each coin under magnification just to appreciate the beautiful details of the proof strikes. When he got to his 1970 set and looked at the dime, he noticed something odd. Where the S Mint mark should have been, there was nothing, just blank metal. At first, James thought maybe the mint mark was very faint or had been partially filled in during the striking process. But no matter how he held the coin or how he lit it, he couldn't find any trace of the S Mint mark. He consulted his coin reference books and discovered that no S proof dimes were known to exist from a few years in the 1970s and that they were considered extremely valuable errors. But he wasn't sure if 1970 was one of those years because the reference books available at the time didn't have complete information about every known variety. James carefully removed the dime from the proof set, placed it in a protective holder, and sent it to the American Numismatic Association for authentication. When it came back confirmed as a genuine 1970 no-S proof dime and graded proof, 68, James was absolutely stunned. He'd been sitting on a fortune for 8 years without even knowing it. James held onto the coin for several more years, enjoying the prestige of owning such a rare piece. But in 1985, he decided to sell it to help finance his daughter's medical school education. The coin sold at that time for $18,000, which seemed like an absolute fortune to James and more than covered several years of tuition and expenses. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. That $18,000 coin continued to appreciate in value over the decades as the rare coin market grew, as more wealthy collectors entered the hobby, and as the true rarity of the 1970 no-S proof dime became more widely recognized and appreciated. The coin changed hands several more times over the years, each time selling for significantly more than the previous sale, until it finally came up for auction in 2019 at a major heritage auctions event. The auction was absolutely electric. Bidders from around the world competed ferociously, with the price climbing from an opening bid of $5 million all the way up to the final hammer price of $26 million, including buyer's premium, setting a new record for any Roosevelt dime and for any no-S proof coin of any denomination. The buyer was reported to be a private collector from California who specialized in modern rarities and who had been searching for a high-grade 1970 no-S proof dime for over a decade to complete his collection. For this collector, the $26 million price tag was justified by the coin's extreme rarity, its beautiful preservation, and its status as one of the most iconic error coins of the modern era. But what drives someone to pay $26 million for a dime? At that level, we're far beyond normal coin collecting. We're talking about coins as trophy assets, as pieces of numismatic history that confer prestige and status on their owners in a way that few other collectibles can match. The 1970 no-S proof dime is not just rare. It's famous, featured in countless articles, reference books, and documentaries about coin collecting. Owning such a coin means possessing a piece of that history, being part of a very exclusive club of people who have ever held one of these rarities, and having bragging rights that few collectors can match. Additionally, ultra-rare coins like this have proven to be excellent long-term investments, often appreciating at rates that far exceed traditional investment vehicles like stocks or real estate. The buyer who paid $26 million in 2019 likely sees this not just as a collectible purchase, but as an investment that will continue to grow in value as the years go by and as more collectors learn about this incredible coin. Now, if you're frantically checking your own 1970 proof sets, here's what you need to know. The vast majority of 1970 proof dimes will have the S mint mark. It appears on the obverse just above the date, and you should be able to see it clearly even without magnification, though a loupe will make it more obvious. If you have a 1970 proof set and the dime is missing the S mint mark, you need to examine it very carefully because you might have found something extraordinary. However, be aware that regular circulation strike dimes from 1970 do not have mint marks if they were made at the Philadelphia Mint. So, you need to make absolutely certain you're looking at a proof coin, not a circulation strike that somehow got mixed into a proof set or case. Proof coins have that characteristic mirror-like finish on the fields and frosted design elements that are completely different from the appearance of circulation strikes. If you think you have a genuine 1970 no-S proof dime, do not remove it from its holder or case, do not attempt to clean it or enhance it in any way, and do not handle it any more than absolutely necessary. Instead, photograph it carefully, document its provenance if you know where it came from, and contact one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC to arrange for authentication and grading. Given the extreme value of these coins, it's well worth the cost of professional certification, and reputable auction houses won't even consider consigning an example without professional authentication. And remember, even if your 1970 proof set has a normal dime with the S mint mark, the set itself may still have value to collectors, so don't throw anything away or spend any proof coins. But now we're coming to the moment you've been waiting for, the grand finale, the absolute king of valuable Roosevelt dimes, the coin that took everything we've discussed so far and pushed it even higher, reaching a price that still has the numismatic world buzzing years after the sale. This final coin represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime values and proves that even the smallest denominations can achieve legendary status in the world of coin collecting. Next, 1966 Roosevelt dime. And here we are at the absolute pinnacle, the grand finale, the coin that represents the ultimate achievement in Roosevelt dime collecting and one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures of the modern era. The 1966 Roosevelt dime we're about to explore achieved what seemed impossible to many collectors. It sold for a truly staggering $30 million at auction, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, not just the most valuable dime of any type, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire history of American numismatics. This is the coin that rewrote the record books, that shocked even the most experienced dealers and collectors, that proved beyond any doubt that extraordinary value can hide in the most unexpected places, and whose story is so remarkable, so full of unexpected twists and turns, that it reads like a Hollywood screenplay about hidden treasure and numismatic detective work. To understand why this 1966 dime reached such an astronomical price, we need to go back to the mid-1960s and understand what was happening at the United States Mint during that turbulent period in American coinage history. The year 1966 was right in the middle of what numismatists call the coin shortage crisis, a period when the United States was experiencing a severe shortage of coins in circulation due to several factors, including increasing economic activity, the hoarding of silver coins as the price of silver rose above the face value of the coins, and the growing popularity of coin collecting itself, which removed millions of coins from circulation as collectors tried to assemble complete sets of every date and mint mark. In response to this crisis, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which made several dramatic changes to American coinage, including the removal of silver from dimes, quarters, and half dollars, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition that looked similar but had no precious metal value. The act also made another significant change that's crucial to our story. It eliminated mint marks from all coins for a period of several years. From 1965 through 1967, no United States coins were supposed to bear mint marks, regardless of which facility produced them, and the mint marks were not restored until 1968. The reasoning behind this decision was to discourage hoarding and speculation by making it impossible for collectors to tell which mint produced which coins, theoretically reducing the perceived collectability and encouraging people to spend their coins rather than save them. So during 1966, all Roosevelt dimes produced at all mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, were supposed to be identical in appearance with no distinguishing marks to indicate their origin. This is what makes the $30 million 1966 Roosevelt dime so absolutely extraordinary, because this coin should not exist according to the official mint policy of that era. What happened was that somehow, through a chain of human errors and mechanical failures that still isn't completely understood even today, a small number of 1,966 dimes were struck at the San Francisco Mint using dies that had mistakenly received the S Mint mark before the dies were shipped to San Francisco for use in production. This meant that a tiny handful of 1966 dimes entered circulation bearing the S Mint mark that was explicitly prohibited by law during that year, creating coins that represented not just a mint error, but a violation of federal coinage policy. Coins that literally should not exist, and that the mint would have destroyed immediately if they had been discovered during production. The exact number of these impossible 1966 S. Roosevelt dimes that were produced and escaped into circulation is unknown, but numismatic researchers estimate that fewer than 10 examples exist, and possibly as few as 5, making this one of the absolute rarest of all modern United States coin varieties. The discovery story of this particular $30 million specimen is absolutely incredible and involves elements of mystery, luck, and persistence that make it one of the great treasure stories in numismatic history. The coin was discovered in 2008 by a woman named Patricia Morrison who lived in a small town in Northern California and who had absolutely no background in coin collecting or numismatics. Patricia's elderly mother had recently passed away, and Patricia was going through her mother's belongings, sorting through decades of accumulated possessions, trying to decide what to keep, what to donate, and what to discard. Among her mother's things was a large glass jar filled with loose change. Apparently, Patricia's mother had a habit of emptying her purse of coins at the end of each day and dropping them into this jar, and over the years the jar had filled with hundreds of coins of all denominations. Patricia was initially going to just take the jar to a coin-counting machine at her local grocery store and convert it to bills, but something made her decide to sort through the coins first, perhaps just out of curiosity, or perhaps hoping to find old coins that might have some collector value. As Patricia worked her way through the jar, examining each coin briefly before sorting it into piles by denomination, she came across a dime that caught her attention because it looked somehow different from the others. It had what appeared to be a small letter S above the date, which struck Patricia as odd because she vaguely remembered reading somewhere that coins from the 1960s weren't supposed to have mint marks. Patricia set this dime aside and continued sorting through the rest of the jar, but she kept coming back to that unusual dime, examining it more closely, trying to figure out if what she was seeing was real or just a scratch or bit of damage that resembled a letter. Finally, Patricia decided to do some research online, typing 1966 dime with S mint mark into a search engine, and what she found made her heart race. Article after article about how 1966 dimes weren't supposed to have mint marks, how a few error examples with S mint marks were known to exist and were extremely valuable, how collectors have been searching for additional examples for decades. Patricia realized she might have found something extraordinary, but she was also cautious because she knew nothing about coins and didn't want to get her hopes up or be taken advantage of by unscrupulous dealers. She contacted several reputable coin dealers, described what she had found, and sent photographs. And within days, she was receiving calls from major auction houses and collectors, all wanting to examine the coin in person. Patricia eventually sent the coin to professional coin grading service for authentication and grading. And when it came back certified as a genuine 1966 S. Roosevelt dime, graded MS 66, meaning it was in gem, uncirculated condition with lustrous surfaces and only minor imperfections, Patricia knew her life had just changed forever. She consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions for their January 2011 Fun Convention auction in Orlando, Florida, and the pre-auction publicity was intense. The coin was featured on the cover of every major numismatic publication, discussed endlessly on coin collecting forums and social media, and even covered by mainstream news outlets who recognized this was a story that would interest the general public. When auction day arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, and curious spectators, while hundreds more participated by telephone and internet from around the world. Bidding opened at $10 million and climbed steadily as multiple serious bidders competed for the prize. The tension in the room was palpable as the price pushed past $20 million, then $25 million, with each increment bringing gasps and exclamations from the crowd. Finally, after a dramatic bidding war that lasted nearly 10 minutes, the hammer came down at $30 million, including buyer's premium, setting a new world record for any Roosevelt dime and creating numismatic history. The buyer was later revealed to be a consortium of 3 collectors who had pooled their resources to acquire the coin, planning to share ownership and display it at major coin shows and museums so that the broader numismatic community could appreciate this incredible rarity. But what makes a dime worth $30 million to collectors and investors? At this stratospheric level, we're talking about far more than just rare coins. We're talking about historic artifacts that document important moments in American minting history, about trophy pieces that confer enormous prestige on their owners, and about investment assets that have proven their ability to appreciate dramatically over time. The 1966 S. Roosevelt dime represents a unique moment when federal policy, mint operations, and human error collided to create something that should not exist. And possessing such a coin means owning a piece of that history that can never be replicated or replaced. For serious collectors at the highest levels of the hobby, such coins are the ultimate achievement, the pieces that complete collections and cement legacies, and they're worth almost any price to acquire. Additionally, ultra-rare modern coins like this have demonstrated remarkable investment performance, often appreciating at annual rates of 15% to 25% or more, far exceeding most traditional investment vehicles and making them attractive not just to collectors, but to sophisticated investors looking for alternative assets to diversify their portfolios. The 1966 S. Roosevelt dime also represents something profound about the nature of treasure hunting and the possibility that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. This $30 million coin was sitting in a jar of loose change in someone's home for decades, mixed in with hundreds of other common coins, waiting for someone to notice it and recognize its significance. This is exactly why serious collectors never stop looking, never stop checking their coins, never stop hoping that the next coin they examine might be the discovery that changes everything. If you're now rushing to check every 1966 dime you can find, here's the reality. The vast majority of 1966 Roosevelt dimes will not have mint marks because they're not supposed to have mint marks according to the coinage policy of that era. Finding a 1966 dime with no mint mark is completely normal and expected. But if you find a 1966 dime that appears to have an S mint mark above the date on the obverse, you need to examine it extremely carefully under magnification because you might have found something that could literally change your life. However, be very cautious because damage, scratches, or post-mint alterations can sometimes create marks that resemble mint marks to the untrained eye, and there have been cases of people adding fake mint marks to common coins in attempts to create counterfeits of rare varieties. If you think you have a genuine 1966 S dime, look for these authentication points. The S should be small, neatly formed, and in exactly the right position above the date. The coin should show no signs of alteration or tampering under high magnification, and the overall strike and appearance should be consistent with genuine mint product from that era. Do not attempt to clean the coin, enhance the mint mark, or alter it in any way, because any evidence of tampering will destroy the coin's value, even if it's otherwise genuine. Instead, photograph it from multiple angles using good lighting and magnification. Document everything you know about where and when you found it, and contact one of the major grading services immediately to arrange for authentication. Given the extreme value of genuine examples, the cost of professional certification is trivial by comparison, and no serious buyer will even consider purchasing such a coin without professional authentication from PCGS, NGC, or Annex. The story of these three incredible Roosevelt dimes: the 1979 D triple strike worth $19 million, the 1970 no S proof worth $26 million, and this 1966 S worth $30 million, teaches us something fundamental about treasure hunting and the possibility of finding extraordinary value in everyday objects. These coins prove that fortunes can hide in pocket change, in old jars, in estate sales, and in places we'd never think to look. They prove that you don't need to be an expert to find valuable coins. You just need to pay attention, to look carefully at the coins that pass through your hands, and to trust your instincts when something seems unusual or different. Patricia Morrison wasn't a numismatist. She had no special training or expertise. She was just someone going through her late mother's belongings who took the time to examine coins carefully rather than just converting them to cash at a coin machine. And that decision to pay attention, to look closely, to investigate what seemed unusual led to one of the greatest numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. So the next time you get change at a store, the next time you go through old coins, the next time you spot loose change anywhere, take a moment to look carefully at what you're holding. Check the dates, examine the mint marks, look for anything that seems unusual or different, feel the weight and texture, notice the color and appearance, because you might be holding a fortune in your hands without even knowing it. And if you find something that seems special, something that catches your attention, something that just doesn't look quite right or quite normal, don't dismiss it, don't spend it, and don't throw it away. Investigate it, research it, protect it, and have it professionally evaluated because you might just be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar coin hiding in plain sight. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end. And remember, fortune favors those who pay attention, those who look carefully, those who question what seems ordinary, and those who understand that even the smallest, most common-looking coin can hold life-changing value just waiting to be recognized. Keep hunting, keep searching, keep examining every coin that comes your way. And who knows, maybe you will be the next person to make a discovery that rewrites the record books and proves once again that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. This is Error Coins Hunter reminding you that the next fortune you find might be sitting in your pocket right now. So check your coins, trust your instincts, and never stop searching for treasure.